Running Kafka in an enterprise setting is a daunting task. As more teams start to use Kafka, it becomes difficult to manage, with clusters and topics popping up everywhere and data floating around unattended. Not to mention the unnecessarily high costs. Moving to a central Kafka team helps you cut down the costs, but also creates a bottleneck for other teams and slows down development processes. Introducing Axual Governance. Axual Governance provides a centralized governance layer on top of any Kafka, so teams can develop quickly while maintaining control of your data. Axual offers data ownership and topic approval workflows, provides insights into topics, applications, and how they are connected, and enables teams to independently work on a central Kafka through self-service. It's also completely hassle-free. Onboarding can be completed in minutes. From now on, you can scale teams around Kafka and always stay in control. So go ahead and unleash the full potential of Kafka to your teams with Axual Governance. Start your free trial at axual.com.
All right. Welcome everyone at today's launching event of Axual Governance. I think it's great to see so many people have joined us, so that's super cool. And I'm not alone. Sitting next to me is Jeroen van Disseldorp. He's the CEO of Axual, and also on the other end of the screen is Joris. Hi, Joris. He's the CTO of Axual. So the agenda for today, we're going to quickly discuss our vision on event streaming. Then we're going to discuss something about Axual Governance and why do you need it. Joris is going to give a quick demo of Axual Governance, and we're going to end this webinar with a live Q&A. So if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to submit your question. There is a Q&A box in Zoom. So if you have a question, just submit it and we will try to answer it. That's it. Jeroen, take it away.
Yep. Thank you very much, Joey. And welcome everybody to this launch webinar. So in the past years, we've all participated in the Kafka market, which has grown tremendously. If you look at what the statistics say now, that it's more than 80% of Fortune 100 companies, they use Kafka. Over 100,000 organizations worldwide are using Kafka, with many questions open on Stack Flow and a lot of job vacancies. So you can pretty surely say that Kafka has really taken off in the past 5-6 years. When we started with Kafka, we always had this vision that Kafka itself should be the central marketplace where all of your applications, all of your departments exchange business events at the moment they occur. And it means that you have to bring together a lot of different departments in an organization, potentially a lot of different teams or applications in your organization. But that can definitely be done and has definite value. We got backed up by a study a number of years after we started, where Gartner also says that if you have data sharing as a best practice in your organization, or even as a policy in your organization, you will most likely outperform your peers, because there's a lot of data, there's a lot of value in the sharing of data internally. So don't lock it up in stovepipes, compare it to the Kafka world. Don't stuff away your data on a separate Kafka cluster, and make it shared, shareable by default, and you will gain a lot more value from it. But if you do that, then typically you may run into some complexities. And this is what many of our customers have seen over the years, is that running Kafka at scale can be quite daunting. How do you keep overview of what is going on your cluster, which application has access to which particular topic, and especially how to not spend too much time on maintenance, but instead spend the time on the business innovation that you want to have Kafka for. Well, this is what we set up Axual Platform and Axual Cloud for. It's a layered platform with a streaming layer in the middle, a data governance layer on top, which serves a self-service UI and API to all the teams that interact with Kafka. There's CI/CD and GitOps support in the platform, and it runs on any cloud environment. And this model has really caught on, especially with companies that do not want to, design and set up such a platform themselves. They want to just buy one off the market that has proven its value, that's proven its worth, and is also recognized internationally by analysts. So that's what we did, and that's what Axual traditionally did with its software to provide a complete enterprise streaming platform to its customers. But in the past years, the Kafka market has changed quite a lot. It's grown quite a lot. And we've noticed that customers came to us with different questions than they did 4 or 5 years ago. And they said, well, you have this Axual platform, which is really nice. And I can see that it serves a purpose for the customers that you have. But we already have an existing Kafka. We have Aven, we have Confluent Cloud, we have an open source implementation on-prem. Could you somehow that provide your value in the management layer that you have as a self-service layer on top of our existing Kafka? And this is what Axual Governance has become. So in the past 7 to 8 months, we've severely rewritten our architecture. Some of the more legacy stuff that came out of the on-prem world has been abolished. Some of the architectural complexities have been abolished, and we've really adopted a middle layer under Axual Governance, which is able to adapt to any kind of Kafka. And that's what we're introducing here today. The value that this brings is that, regardless of which Kafka you use, you can have a single source of truth for your event data. You can really collaborate with a lot of teams around the central Kafka. We have customers that have used this interface and the API already to create dozens or even up to hundreds of teams around the central Kafka. It also provides a way to consolidate Kafka clusters. There's no need to have teams operate and manage their own Kafka cluster anymore. So consolidate by all means. You can accelerate the team's streaming use cases by simply making it easier to find data, easier to access data in the organization. And what you'll see also in the demo is that there's no really in-depth Kafka expertise required. This is for any feature team that coincidentally needs to exchange some information with Kafka, but then goes on to write the rest of its business application. So having said that, I'm going to now pass on the word to Joris to give us a demo of Axual Governance.
All right, thanks, Jeroen. Shall I take over the screen?
Yep.
All right, let's see. Yes, so I have the honor to show you all what we've been working on the past couple of months. First, I want to set the scene, so explain a bit what we are going to show in the demo to give you the context that you need. So the demo story for today is that we're going to onboard an Aven Kafka cluster. So I have created a Kafka cluster in Aven, created some topics and schemas. And of course, those topics and schemas are owned by various teams that are interacting with Kafka. Those teams are responsible for their own applications, sometimes also for their topics. But what I'm lacking really is good, control of ownership and approval workflows on Kafka on those topics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to onboard that cluster on Axual Governance. And I'm going to make sure that the topics are owned by the correct teams, and basically the same for the apps. And I'm going to invite colleagues into those teams to properly organize my topics. So I'm not now going to go to the next screen. So I hope my screen is still visible. Let me know if this is not the case. I'm logged into Ivan right now. In one of my projects, I have a Kafka service. It's called Kafka Dev. For the sake of the demo, I've created some topics already. You can see them here. If I click the topics, you can see the configurations. Just a bunch of topics to show that it is working and what it can do. For this service, I've also enabled schema registry support. So Avro schemas, I also uploaded for my topics, both for the key and value in this case. And lastly, I set up service users. This is very important to do. Security on Kafka is important. You should only allow applications access to the data that they should have access to. So I've done that already using this Ivan interface, and I'm now going to show what it looks like when I onboard this onto our service. So when I'm going to do the onboarding for Ivan, I need a project name that is showing here, and I need an access token. And what I can do in Ivan is I can create an access token specifically for Axual Governance. So I go to the user profile, authentication tokens. I'm going to create a token specifically for Axual Governance. Of course, the name doesn't really matter, but you can really recognize it. I'm going to generate the token, and I will already copy it into my clipboard because I know I will need it later on in the demo. It's good to mention that you can always decide to revoke this authentication if you were trying Axual Governance and you decide that you do not want to use it anymore, you can always revoke access to it. All right, now to the juicy part of the demo. I'm going to log into Axual Governance and I will onboard my Ivan cluster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with Google. Both Google and email login are supported at the moment. And I will use a demo Google account to do the onboarding, to simplify the onboarding. I'm going to accept this request. And the first thing I see is a wizard where I'm going to enter the organization name. Everything that I'm onboarding, topics, schemas, ACLs are all, under an organization, as well as, of course, the users and the groups. So organization name is filled in. The username, first name and last name can be determined from my Google account. Click continue. Well, as I said, Ivan is my, I'm going to onboard an Ivan cluster this time. Ivan is already selected, it's the first option here. Confluent Cloud and Apache Kafka. Confluent Cloud is also supported. Apache Kafka support will be added soon. If you do not see the Kafka provider that you're looking for, feel free to contact us using this button. All right, let's continue. So how do I do this onboarding? I need the project name and access token. If you have trouble finding it, we have added some onboarding steps for the providers that we support. So project name is streaming-platform. The access token should be still on my clipboard, so I can paste it here and verify to make sure that what I've entered is indeed correct. All right, that's great. I can now continue. On the next screen, you're asked to select your Kafka service. It might be that under your project, you have multiple Kafka services and you wanted to decide to onboard just one of them. For instance, a development Kafka cluster. In this case, I'm going to select that cluster. It will automatically detect that I'm also have a schema registry enabled for that cluster. And it will already show me the amount of topics, applications or ACLs and schemas that are found in that service. So this looks good. Let's continue. Next step in the wizard is just to add some metadata to the cluster that I'm onboarding. In this case, first question is the purpose. It's a non-production cluster that I'm onboarding, and I can add a name to it, for instance, dev cluster, which helps me to easily identify it later when I'm onboarding multiple clusters. This name would help to find it. All right, on to the next screen. I'm almost done with the onboarding. It shows more details on what exactly I'm going to onboard. So it shows the topic names, number of partitions for the different topics, configuration properties that you can open right here. Next to that, ACL. So what about access control? Are there already applications authorized to connect to these topics? So we can see the producer and the consumer ACLs that are already set on this particular alert settings topic, and the same for the other topics that I'm importing. And lastly, the data itself. What does it look like? Schemas, the Avro schemas that are associated with the topics, it can also be seen here in this model. So this should give you a good sense of what you are onboarding. The cluster is indeed the cluster that I want to onboard, because all the topics that I see here are the topics that I want to onboard. So this all looks good. I click onboard to really do the onboarding. So now, congratulations, they were onboarded successfully, all the topics, applications, and schemas. They have been assigned to admins. This requires a little bit of explanation. In our system, we have groups. Groups have members, all the entities in the system. So the topics and applications are owned by groups. So by default, we create one group and we assign all those topics and applications to that group. Okay. So when I click finish, I am actually in the system, in the actual software. So what I can see now when I open the dashboard, I can immediately see my topics. So these are the topics that are owned by the team that I am a member of. Same for my applications. When I go to the next screen, topic overview, you can see in a bit more detail how those topics and applications are interacting with each other. So we see an alert manager application that is producing to alert settings, alert processor that is consuming from that topic, and another one to ultimately produce to transaction alerts. So this is something we can discover while looking at the authorizations that are set on the topics. On the next screen, this is the topic overview. You could really, you could also call this a catalog, topic catalog. You can search through the catalog by simply adding, entering your search term. And you can also see who owns the particular topic. From this screen, you can also add a new one, which I will do later. Next screen, applications. So for us, an application is anything that produces or consumes to a Kafka topic. Right now, only custom applications are supported. In the future, we will also add connectors to this. But you can see that those applications are authorized to do things with topics, as you could see in this overview. Schemas. You can quickly browse through schemas that are imported and the namespace they are existing in. Settings, I will skip for now. And these are like the most important pages to mention. So what you also saw when I visited the dashboard for the first time is this resource center. It should help you to finish essential steps to get the most out of Axual Governance. So the first thing I'm going to do, I feel a bit lonely here, is to invite a colleague. So this wizard should guide me through the steps of inviting a colleague. Go to settings, users, invite user. So I'm going to invite my colleague, Charlie. Charlie is in a team that is all about transaction processing. They are responsible for producing the transaction events on a topic. And my colleague Dana is responsible for anything that has to do with interaction with customers. So alerting, push notifications, customer interaction is the name of their team. So I've invited them both. They can, at their own pace, accept the invite and log into Axual Governance. But what I can already do is make sure that the topics that I imported are assigned to the correct teams. So I go to the topic, I edit it, alert settings, I assign to the customer interaction team. Go back to topics, transaction alerts, I assign to the same team. And the last one, topic transactions, is owned by the team that is responsible for transaction processing. So if I now go to the dashboard, you can see that my topics, I don't really have a topic that I own anymore. I think in a normal onboarding scenario, you are the tenant admin or the organization admin. You initially own everything, but your job is to assign them to the correct owners. My applications, actually the same story. Alert processing is done by customer interaction team. I update the app, go back for alert manager, assign it to the same team, and transaction manager I assign to transaction processing team. So right now, let me go back to the dashboard. I see that I have successfully assigned them to the teams that are dealing with the topics or the applications. And that is an important governance aspect, making sure that the resources that are on the Kafka clusters are owned by the correct teams, because they can decide best on who is allowed to produce or consume to a topic. So what I can now show you is what does that mean when I have a, as Jeroen mentioned in the presentation, there is a lot of value in scaling the organization around a Kafka cluster or around multiple Kafka clusters. And how we enable that is by allowing the people that log into the system or that are invited into the system to create their own applications and to create their own topics. Knowing, of course, that when they want to interact with existing topics that are owned by other teams, they have to request access. So knowing that the security boundaries are in place, we can allow people to do these things. So for the demo, I'm going to work on the use case where I want to scan the transactions, the bank transactions for fraudulent activities. So I'm creating a new application. I call it a transaction monitor. I just copy the name for now. I just select the team that I am a member of. It's the admins team. This is just metadata. It's a Java application in this case. Visibility of the app, I set to public. It's okay if people know that the app exists. That doesn't mean that any security related information is visible. It's just that the app itself is visible in the graph and in the catalog. So transaction monitoring application I create, because ultimately this application is what I need to get secure access to the Kafka topic transactions that I'm interested in. From this interface, I can add authentication information. And this information, of course, is vital for the people, building the application, developing the application, and ultimately connecting to the Kafka cluster. So you can see I can, from this interface, generate authentication information. As you would normally see in these systems, you should really copy paste the information that you have right away, because it will not be visible after you close this model. Then you can only see the username of the app that is authorized. I'm not going to produce or consume in this demo, I can now safely close this module, and I can show you that there is a request button here that I need to click to request access to the transactions topic. So the transaction monitor needs access to the transaction topic. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to request approval. You can now see in this overview in the app that indeed the monitor is interacting with the topic, but there is an exclamation mark here because the app hasn't been granted access yet to consume from this topic. When I go to the dashboard, I can also see that request, and I can decide to cancel it. I am not going to do that, but someone in the transaction, in the team that owns the transaction topic should either approve or deny access, after which my application gets access. Yeah, this is an important aspect of Axual Governance. And lastly, I can also show you that whenever, for instance, I want to produce those fraudulent transactions on a topic, I can just create a topic myself. I call it fraudulent transactions. I am the owner, or the team I am a part of is the owner. I'm just using JSON for now. Retention policy, delete, add topic. And what is also important to mention is that a topic needs proper configuration to end up on a Kafka cluster. I'm going to select 4 partitions here. I'm just going to leave the default properties, and I click save. What I can also do now is that since I own this application, I can simply go to the transaction monitor. I can add another request to produce to that fraudulent transaction topic. I request approval. And I should be able to see the request here. Yeah. Because I own this topic, I can approve this request already. So specifically for this topic, I can approve the request. For the other one, I have to wait for an approval from the owners. So when I go back to this overview, you can now see that it is authorized to produce to this one, but I still need access to the source of the data. That part I'm not going to demo here. Please believe me that that is also working. And maybe good to mention that you can also see here now back in the dashboard that the application I created are now owned by me, and I can easily access them through the dashboard. Yeah, so before I close the demo, I can maybe show you the proof that it works by going back to the interface of Avon. We now go to topics, and I can see here the fraudulent transactions topic that I just created. Okay, and the final notes for people that are going to try out the Axual Governance. Use the resource center to try out the different things that are possible in our software. There are links to guided tours and documentation. And of course, contact support if you have issues. So that was my demo. I would like to give the word back to Jeroen.
All right. Yes, thank you very much, Joris. It's great to see that a plan that has had so much discussion already internally has come together so nicely. It really looks spiffy interface and a great way to keep control of all of the data that you have residing on Kafka. So compliments to the team. In terms of features, small overview of what you get with Axual Governance. It's really self-service for DevOps. You have the catalogs that Joris browsed through quickly. Of course, in the demo, these weren't filled fully, only with a couple of applications and a couple of topics. But in practice, they also work with larger data sets. So hundreds of topics and hundreds of applications is not a big thing. Of course, you have your data and application ownership, which was shown in the demo, with admins being able to transfer ownership from one team to another. This also helps if you have orphan topics or orphan applications in your organization, then an admin can step in and assign ownership to somebody else. The approval workflows, of course, is what you saw. Different data formats and schema are supported, and there's also a schema explorer is a feature in the Axual Governance product. So how is it planned? How is it captured in different plans? So there's a number of plans that you have. The standard, every plan comes with a free trial. There are 3 paid plans, which lead up to enterprise. They start out with standard. This is for onboarding maximum 2 clusters and having 5 of these teams. If you go to pro, it gets to 4 clusters and 15 teams. So this is for the larger collaboration already. And on the far right-hand side, there's unlimited clusters and unlimited teams. And this is where Axual really becomes the dashboard from where you control your entire enterprise streaming landscape. More and more features will be added over time. I already saw a question coming in for support for plain Kafka Strimzi. Definitely that will be supported. You also could have seen it already in the initial video. The Kafka logo is there. We use Strimzi ourselves. If you go to the Strimzi website, you'll find our logo there as well. So we're an active user of Strimzi, active supporter of Strimzi, and contributor of Strimzi, and that will definitely be supported soon. And then you can also onboard your on-premise Kafka clusters. Other features that are forthcoming have to deal with stream browse and search, being able to browse and search through different topics, but also based on ownership. So data owners would be able to do so, but anybody else would have to go through proper authorizations to be able to browse the topic. Kafka Connect is also forthcoming. And there's also going to be functionality for reconciliation. So that means that if your organization somehow wants to keep the backdoor open to deploy topics to Avon or to Confluent Cloud or to your Strimzi Kafka for that matter right away, you can still do so. And then in the future, Axual will be able to detect the drift in configuration that it has in its own database compared to what it sees on the Kafka cluster. And we'll be also able to present those findings to an administrator for you to decide on whether you want to adopt those changes or whether you want to throw them away. And this all is giving you the power to control everything that is going on your Kafka environments. So with that, I would like to invite everybody that has the opportunity to start a free trial at axual.com. You're able to register there, sign up, onboard your Kafka cluster in much the same way as Joris has just shown in the demo. Please give us your feedback, and we'd be very happy to listen to what your experiences are, and if this is a valuable product for you. Thank you very much for attending today, and let's go over to the Q&A.